Hey guys, welcome back to Free Drop Live. Delighted to be joined by a legend of Western Province golf, a former Springbok as well, Peter Todt. Pete, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Craig. Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for having me. I'm very flattered. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making the time. You must be itching to get back out on a bowling green now. It's probably been a while, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think bowls and golf are pretty similar in that they're both non-contact sports, and they're
Mm.
chipping and putting in golf and bowls in their execution. You're talking about a lot of feel, so they're very similar. So I think all of us bowlers, golfers, ex-golfers, we're all itching to get out there. We can't wait.
So you said ex golfers. Where do you sort of sit in that sort of realm? I mean, when last did you play, and how often do you play these days?
Yeah, Craig. I took up bowls about 7 years ago. My golf was deteriorating, my handicap was drifting. And every time I went to a golf club, the first thing people would ask me is not, how are you? What's your handicap? When I told them, they'd say, oh, you bloody ringer, you trophy hunting and whatever.
Yeah.
And I was just getting less enjoyment out of playing the game. And I'd started bowls. Some of my friends had roped me in. And after a few games of bowls, I suddenly realized, hang on a sec, at my age, I'm probably going to get better at bowls, but I'm not going to get better at golf.
Sure.
So it was a bit of a no-brainer to certainly take up bowls on a more regular basis. And then the bug bit me, just like it does to all golfers who take up golf, and same thing happens to bowlers. And as a result, I haven't played now for about 6 or 7 years, but that doesn't mean that I don't follow the game closely.
Yeah.
Probably follow it more closely than most golfers do. I absolutely love the game.
No, it's still very special, even if you don't really play as much these days. But I'm curious, did you find that, if you had good touch with the putter, that translated into good touch on the bowling green as well?
Absolutely, Craig. It's chipping and putting and bowls are so similar in that you're marrying feel, distance with the curvature, whether it be the slope in golf or the nap, and certainly the bias in bowls, and you've got to marry the two. And feel is a very difficult thing to teach a person. You can't teach a person how far to take the putter back for a 5-foot putt, because everybody's got a different method. So it's all really based on feel. And it's like if I throw a ball to you and you a meter or 5 meters away, and I want it to land sort of on your belly button.
Yeah,
that's feel, being able to judge it and lob it at a speed. So bowls and golf are just so related. It's great. And it's amazing how many ex-golfers I've subsequently met, guys that I played with 20, 30, 40, even 50 years ago when I was a little picky. And I've certainly linked up with them again on the bowling green. So that, golf and bowls, very similar.
And I mean, at the end of the day, like that sort of camaraderie and that sort of atmosphere is what we all look for at the end of the day.
Craig, sport is sport. So, rugby, cricket, golf, bowls. If you're a sports person and you're a member of a club, whether you're in the third team or the first team or whatever team you're in, you're always going to have that camaraderie, and that friendship. It's how you play it, and whether you choose to socialize and be part of the team. But so I get that in bowls, but I certainly, I've got such fond memories of the old golfing days and the people I've met and the jokes. A lot of the golfing stories I'd love to be able to tell you, but I don't think this is quite the platform to relate all of the stories, but maybe we can chat about a few of them.
No, for sure. But just sort of shifting to your golf. When did you first take up the game, and why did you get into it?
Craig, like most people that start their sport, when you're a youngster, especially golfers, my dad was a very keen golfer. So it sort of rubbed off on me. I got sort of hand-me-down cut-off clubs, and we had a big field in front of our house where I stayed in Pinelands. So I used to go and sort of hit on the field. And then I started caddying for my dad at about the age of, I suppose it was about 8 or 9. And on a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday morning, I later got banned from caddying the Saturday afternoon at Mowbray, believe it or not, but that's a different story. But Sunday morning, he had his regular 4-ball, and I used to pull his cart, and obviously learned a lot from, caddying for him. And then afterwards, he'd have a shower and go and have a drink or two in the pub, and I would chip and putt and have my own little competitions from within on the putting green there, until he came down and he had to virtually really chisel me off the green there, because I was having my own little competitions within myself. So yeah, I started, as I say, with hand-me-down clubs and caddying for my dad. It was great.
Yeah, that's a very, very cool way to, sort of get your feet wet and make your start in the game. But you mentioned that Mowbray actually banned you from caddying. We'll get into their strange policies a bit later. Yeah, and then other sports that you played growing up, what else were you interested in, and what did you play?
Well, Craig, golf, we played it in the holidays. Your dad and I used to play in the holidays. My mom would drop me off and give me a little bit of pocket money so I could buy like a pie and a brown cow at tea time and a sandwich for lunch. Yeah. And we would play our 36 holes a day. They'd drop us at 8, know we were safe and sound, and we would play 36 holes, sometimes even an extra 9 holes, again, play 45 holes in a day. So that was school holidays. But as a picky, cricket was actually my game. And I had dreams when I was a little guy of one day playing Springbok cricket. I mean, it was really what I wanted. And yeah, and I did reasonably well. I made the province under 15 cricket side, and we went on a tour to Rhodesia, and I really had my sights set on sort of ultimately being a Springbok cricketer.
Sure.
And then my big disappointment was in my matric year, I'd scored 100 against, I think it was Plumstead, and a few 50s against Sachs and Bishops. And then I didn't make the Western Province Nuffield side, which I was devastated about, because I thought, if I can't make the province under 19 school side, how the hell am I ever going to make the province senior cricket side and then, ultimately reach my dream? So that was my matric year. And I virtually decided there and then that, because the junior interprovincial under 19 golf championships were coming up shortly after the province trials. They were at Paarl that year. And I said, okay, fine, I'm not going to make it at cricket. Let's see what I can do with golf. And at that stage, obviously, I'd been playing a lot of golf. I was down to about a 1, I think, or scratch handicap at that stage. So I decided, right, give cricket a miss and concentrate on golf. So
I suppose, I mean, if one door closes, another one opens. And in your case, I mean, you had tremendous success pretty much at every level with your golf. But sort of relating the two sports, did you ever find that, any sort of mental aspects that you applied to your batting, you then translated into your golf at all?
Craig, mental, let's start with the physical side. Golf and cricket are two opposites, in the sense that in cricket, the first thing it moves is your head. If you're going forward, your head goes forward. If you're going to play off the back foot, the first thing that happens, your head moves back and your body gets into position. And as we all know, golf's totally the opposite. The old thing, keep your head down, keep your head still. So physically, they're opposites. Mentally, it's difficult, really, Craig. I mean, golf, cricket, any sport, really, it's mental application. It's concentration, applying yourself, practice. So mentally, I would say pretty similar. But as I said, that goes for all sports. But physically, two sort of opposites of the head moving.
And I mean, it's amazing. What I found really interesting was you were very kind enough to give me 4 or 5 scrapbooks that I could work my way through and sort of gain a better understanding of what you achieved. But what I found curious was that, or not curious, interesting, was that, as the years rolled on, I think I started in 1964. Literally, as the years progressed, your handicap plummeted quite considerably year on year. And I don't know, did you find it difficult to, as you say, sort of pick it up in the holidays and not start from scratch again, but there's no real momentum sort of during the term time?
Yeah, Craig, I think anybody who's got a bit of an eye for a ball, it sort of comes more naturally. If you look at the cricketers, I think of all those great fly halves who ended up playing cricket, like Herschel Gibbs and Peter Kirsten, Daryl Cullinan, Lee Barnard. Those guys, I mean, A.B. de Villiers, they could play 4 or 5 different sports. And they, like A.B. de Villiers, I've just finished his book. He didn't, his big thing was tennis, And then he ultimately decided he was going to go for cricket, and he stopped his tennis. But I mean, if 5 years later, pick up a tennis racket, and he would have been able to virtually just pick it up where he left it off. So, I'm obviously not putting myself in that mold, but having a sort of an eye for a ball, we're able to pick it up. I can't say easily, but picked it up during the school holidays, and we played so much. I mean, you can ask your dad. We couldn't get enough golf during the holidays. So that was probably a bit ingrained. So when we sort of left it off during the turn time, we just picked it up quite quickly again after that.
Yeah, and then, I mean, was it a case of, you were just playing for pure enjoyment, or like how badly did you want to beat, as you said, my dad, and I suppose guys like O'Brien Barber and Ricky McCrindle and guys like that?
Oh, we were competitive, Craig. I remember Junior Golf Foundation days, and I don't know if you want to touch on that a bit later, but the Golf Foundation 100%. Was, in fact, let me start there now. The Golf Foundation was for junior golfers 18 and under, run by a guy called Vernon Dixon in the Western Province, although it was a national organization. Vernon Dixon was the most amazing guy. I can't believe he had 25 hours a day. He was retired just for junior golf. And he really dedicated his time to all of us. And that Golf Foundation, so if we weren't playing 36 holes a day at Mowbray, we'd have a tournament, which they had probably 2 or 3 days a week at the different clubs. So you had all your different opens, like the Clavelli Junior Open and the Rondebosch Junior Open, KD, Somerset, all those clubs, where we were so privileged, Craig. It cost virtually nothing. In those days, I think it was R5 a year or R10 a year, but I'm going back a long time. And you played free of charge. So we got to play all these different courses free of charge. We'd have a lift club, and Mom would drop us in the morning, and one of the other moms would fetch us after we'd finished chipping and putting. If we'd play 18 in the morning, have our prize giving. Or Vernon Dixon taught us so much about the etiquette of the game, the rules of the game. And he had prizes like the neatest marked scorecard in the competition would win a prize. It was only a golf ball, but yeah, man, we did our scorecards properly, trying to win that thing, because everybody wanted to walk up in front of all your mates and get a prize, even if it was just the neatest mark. And the other thing he taught us was, the etiquette. And I'm very grateful to my dad as well when it comes to etiquette, because my dad taught me one thing from a very early age. He said, Peter, courtesy costs you nothing. Just remember that. And Vernon Dixon in the Golf Foundation, he was a real student of the game, and he was very strict on discipline. So there was no club throwing or anything like that. But that leads me on to your question just now about competitiveness from an early age. I remember I was 13, I think, or I was 14. Your dad's a year older than me. And the Western Province under 15 side had been picked to go to East London for the junior interprovincial, which was a match play interprovincial with all the provinces. I think, you had like Border, you had EP, there were about 10 or 12 different provinces there. So everybody wanted to make that side. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that your dad and I didn't make the 6, but what they said was, we're going to take a reserve, and the reserve will get his colors. So you'll get that badge, Western Province Junior Golf. So now I'm a lighty of 13 or 14, your dad's a year older. And Vernon Dixon decided that he couldn't split the two of us. So he arranged a shootout, but not 18 holes, 36-hole shootout at King David. And whoever won that game would go with a team and he would get his colors. Man, I'll cut that story short because your dad thrashed me 7 and 6. He completely outplayed me. But Vernon Dixon was such a gentleman, such a very lekker guy, that he saw that maybe there was a bit of talent with this 13-year-old. So he took me along anyway. So I was the second reserve, unofficial. I didn't get my badge, but I went to East London for that tournament and met all the sort of big guys of that era, you know, the under 18s and under 17s. And there I was a little whippersnapper, I think 13 or 14. So yeah, I've digressed a little bit, but I think your question was about competitiveness from an early age. So yeah, that golf foundation was terrific.
Sure. That's to play 36 holes against one of your mates must have been I mean, at that level must have been quite a jewel, eh?
Well, I know I didn't sleep the night before. I was so hungry. I so desperately wanted to beat your old man and get my colors. That was the big thing, you know, have that little Western Province badge on my thing there. And so I was obviously hugely disappointed. That, you know, well, I don't want to take anything away from your dad. Let's say he definitely outplayed me. And well done to him. But I was disappointed that I didn't do better, you know.
Yeah, but it sounds like you probably got the better of him a few times further down the line. I think your 7 club champs to his 1 sort of speaks volumes, the golf and class there. But I think if I'm correct, when you guys were 17, you were the 2 best players at the club, but couldn't play club champs. Is that correct?
Yeah, Craig, your dad's a year older than me, so we fell in the same category. But he turned 18, obviously, when I was still 17. But I'll tell you something that really burnt my backside a lot when I was a junior. I was the lowest handicap in the club. I was 17. I played off for 1, and the constitution of Mowbray Golf Club said that if you're less than 18 years old, you can't play in any club competition. So you can't play Saturday afternoon, you couldn't play Sunday morning, you couldn't represent the club, and you couldn't play club championships. And there I was, the lowest handicap in the club, and I couldn't play in the club champs. And your dad was, so maybe at 16 I wasn't the lowest handicap, and your dad was 17, and so he was in the same boat as I was then. But when you're the lowest handicap in the club and you can't, you know, play in your club champs or represent the club. My mates were all playing in the first league. It was called Stefan in those days. Tinny Hendricks, Bucky Slopeshire. They were winning their club champs and they were playing first league. And there I had to go and watch. I wasn't allowed to. So, but no bitterness towards Mowbray. Mowbray is a fantastic club. They did so much for me, but it was just in the constitution. And my dad was a real stickler. He said, "Don't argue, my boy. That's in the constitution. You can't change the constitution or the rules. And you're not going anywhere else. You're staying at Mowbray. It's a good club." So there I was. But as I say, Mowbray was very good to me apart from that.
It's interesting that, you know, it wasn't actually, as you said, it wasn't a policy that any other club really adopted. That, you know, your mates were able to play league and things like that. It's quite interesting. But you must have been itching to actually get out there when you turned 18 and actually compete against the rest of the players. Yeah,
I had competitive golf in, you know, with the Golf Foundation, the under 18 side. I'd then been playing in the province under 18 side for a while. And, you know, if I can just digress a little bit, one of my biggest disappointments was when I was 17, as I mentioned just now, lowest handicap in the club. I was invited to the Western Province under 23 trials. And the tournament was going to be held over a long weekend. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think it was the 31st of May in those days was a public holiday. So the Friday was a public holiday. And I did well in the trials. I won all my games. So they were forced to pick me. And I was so chuffed that I'd made the province under 23 side. And I went to school after the weekend and I had this letter from the selectors because I had to take the day off school. Sorry, the Friday wasn't a public holiday. Maybe it was Thursday, Friday, but I had to take one day off school. And I had this letter and I gave it to the headmaster, Cecil Clement, and I said, wow, I need to take I think it was the Thursday, off school. I've been picked for the province under 23. And he turned around and he said, my boy, golf's not a recognized sport at school, and I can't give you permission to take a day off school for a non-recognized sport. You can't do it.
Well,
so as a result, I had to withdraw from the team. Not a word of a lie. I was 17. And I had to watch over the weekend. I couldn't take that. I think it was the Thursday. The Friday was a public holiday. So that was a real disappointment for me.
Again, you probably more than made up for it later on. But I mean, what, like, how much of a fight did you put up, and how much did you just sort of accept it and be like, okay, yeah, that's fine?
No, I just accepted it, to be honest. Craig, I didn't put up a fight or anything. My dad was very angry. He wrote a letter to the school and they wouldn't reverse their decision. And so once that decision was made and my dad had got involved, that was it.
Sure.
And it was at my home club at Mowbray, that tournament as well. So I ended up, watching.
And then I presume you must have made it the very next year then.
Yeah, I was quite lucky. I made it. The next year I was in the army, and I made it when I was in the army, and and I made it until I got too old when I was 23.
Yeah. So I mean, a story that my dad tells. Well, I mean, with his memory, he tends to tell the same story over and over again. But he tells a story of when you went to the army, you were something like 5'7" and came back and you were 6'5". So obviously that's quite a radical change physically. What effect did that have on your golf and your swing?
It's true what your dad says. I grew at least 6 inches in the army. And I came back, and I'm not joking, people didn't recognize me because suddenly I was this tall oak, and I was thin. Obviously, I'd grown, but not sort of put on any weight.
Yeah.
And people didn't recognize me. So obviously with that, I had a bigger arc, and as a result, I hit the ball a lot further because I was never a long hitter as a junior. But then I hit the ball a lot further. But as your dad will tell you, I hit it a lot wider as well. I became sort of better known for my width together with my length.
But yeah, I mean, in spite of your lack of length as a junior, you did have quite a bit of success. Obviously, making the under 23 side is testament to that. But what did you sort of build your game around when you were younger?
Craig, it was all short game. I used to spend hours and hours just chipping and putting and having these little competitions with myself. If I hold a 20-foot, I was 1 under, and then I'd putt to the next hole. And if I hold that, I'd be 2 under. And then the next time I went out, whether it's the next day or the next weekend, or I'm talking about during holidays, or if I was caddying for my dad, then I'd try and beat what I did last week. So chipping and putting was, I spent many hours, even later in my more competitive days, when I was playing, senior provincial golf, and then the South African side, I'd spend hours and hours chipping out of divots and over bunkers and out of thick and thin lines and putting, and so maybe that's why I enjoy bowl so much, because it's just so similar to all the chipping and putting that you get in golf.
Yeah, so I mean, when the length kicked in, you must have been pumped, because it sort of gave you very much an all-round kind of game.
Yeah, but as I say, the width became a problem, so I hit it further, but a little bit wider.
So I think that's a good time for you to regale us with a story of a birdie you made on the 10th at Mowbray, where you weren't actually ever on the correct hole. Do you want to share that with us?
Craig, it's actually a true story. People might call me a liar, but it is a true story. I was playing the 10th at Mowbray. For those who don't know it, it's a dogleg to the right. It's a par 5. And to the right of the tee and adjacent or running parallel, you've got the 9th hole. And on the left you've got the 11th hole. So I was trying to hit a big fade with my drive to go around the corner over the bunker and just have a short iron in for my second. And I came over it and I hit a draw. And it went through the trees onto the edge of the 11th green. So for my second, I was on a slight upslope and there were trees in front of me. So I could either just take an iron, hit it down the 11th fairway and probably have a wedge to the green, or I decided to have a go. And I took out, I can't remember whether it was a 1 iron or a 3 wood in those days, and wanted to cut it around the trees, have a go at the green or get nearby. And I came over it once again and I hit a hook and I finished just off the 12th fairway in the semi-rough. So my tee shot had gone on to the 11th, my second gone on to the 12th. And then for my third, there was a tree in front of me. So I had only a sandwich. I was virtually pin-eye because I'd flashed my second. And I tried to go over the tree with a full sandwich, but I hit it thin and it didn't touch anything. It went straight through the tree, but it went like a 3 iron over the green onto the 9th, onto the 9th fairway. And and then I hold it from there, hit a sandwich, went over the bunker into the hole. So I'd made a birdie and I'd been on the 12th, the 11th, the 9th, and then in the hole at the 10th. So it is actually a true story.
Sounds very adventurous. Not something you want to go through too often. I'd imagine it would probably contribute to a bit of a mental breakdown.
It just happened.
And yeah, sort of your success after the army and things like that. When would you say you really sort of broke through and sort of staked your claim as one of the best players in the province?
Craig, it's a difficult one to say, but I'm a firm believer in getting the right breaks at the right time. And I was lucky. And in '74 was my first interprovincial at Phalaborwa, and I was just mentally, it was my first interprov, and I was just very confident. I was like a bulletproof, not arrogant, but I just didn't think I could lose. It was the arrogance of youth, I suppose. Then we went to Phalaborwa, and I think I was playing about number 4, number 5 in the team. And I beat Royden Pybus, who I think at that stage had played for South Africa, a guy called Brian Turner, who played for Rhodesia, and one other guy playing sort of midfield, number 4, number 5. And they said, gee, this Todd guy's playing well. Let's put him at number 1 in the last game. And we were playing Eastern Transvaal, and their number 1 was a guy who played for the Springboks at that stage, a guy called Neville Sanderson. And he was the current British amateur champion.
Sure.
And there, I was just out of the army. I was 19 years old. And I set goals for myself. I said, look, realistically, you're not going to beat this guy. So I said, what is the best or the best loss that you can have? If you lose 2-1, then you've done okay. So I set myself a sort of mini goal, lose 2-1. Anyway, as the game progressed, I was playing nicely and I sort of got 1 up and I got 2 up. And then realistically, the goal got better. Thought, gee whiz, maybe I can halve with this guy. And then, eventually I was sort of 2 up with 4 to play. And I realized that I could actually beat him. So that was a huge thing for me, to obviously beat him as the British number 1 amateur, or the amateur champion. But that was in '74. And then '75 came along and I won sort of the odd tournament, but I wasn't like the number 1 player in the province. And we went to the interprovincial at Mount Edgecombe, Hewlett's in '75. And once again, I was going to be playing, I guess, about number 4, somewhere sort of 3, 4, 5 in the team. And we played a practice round. And this is where I come to right breaks at the right time. In the practice round, I had 3 eagles in 5 holes.
Jeez.
And 3 in 5 holes. Promise you it's true. And suddenly the word got around. Gee whiz, this oak had 3 eagles in 5 holes. Gee, maybe he should be playing number 1. And that's what happened. They put me number 1 for the tournament. And I was just so lucky because they were picking a Springbok side at the end of '75. And I wasn't even thinking Springbok team at that stage. Obviously, my dream had always to become a Springbok, but it wasn't a reality. And they, number one, I played Chris Heineman from Southern Transvaal, who was a Springbok. I played Koen Dreyer from Western Transvaal, who was a Springbok. I played Neville Sandelson again from Eastern Transvaal, and I beat those three guys. And then the last day, I was against David Sadarts, who's subsequently the most capped Springbok. And we ended up halving the game. And it was only when I sort of walked off the green and, I'd beaten those three guys plus halved with David, and they were announcing the Springbok side, which was 6 players. In the past, it was always 4. And at that stage, Dave Simons and Reg Taylor had retired from international golf. So suddenly they were picking 6 players, and 2 of the guys had just retired. And so it was suddenly a reality that, I could get picked for the Commonwealth tournament. And it happened.
That's unbelievable. I know I read that you said you couldn't believe your ears when you were told, but I mean, surely in light of everything you had achieved, you must have thought that there was a realistic possibility of it happening one day.
Well, it was more of a dream and a hope than anything else. As I say, we went to that tournament, and I wasn't the number 1 player in the province when we went there. I was, as I say, probably going to play out of the 8-man team, either 3 or 4 or 5. I can't remember exactly. Maybe it was 2. So, yeah, I didn't go into the tournament thinking, I'm going to become a Springbok, because I wasn't going to be the number 1 player in the province. I hadn't dominated the provincial or the Western Province scene that year. And the interprovincial was played in about September. I'd won the odd tournament, and I think, if my memory serves me correctly, at the end of the previous year, I'd won the Western Province Open, the Province Stroke Play.
Yes, yeah.
But just those 3 eagles in 5 holes. I promise you, it was the right break at the right time. I was so damn lucky. I really was.
Yeah. Well, that's very, very modest of you to say. Sounds like, I mean, beating the guys that you did, you certainly earned your spot on the team. But what was that experience like when you went to the Commonwealth, and just describe that entire week for us?
Well, the Commonwealth tournament was at the end of 75, after that interprovincial. It was at Royal Durban.
Yeah.
And the Commonwealth's not like a World Cup, because the Commonwealth, you had Canada, you had the British team that came out, that Sandy Lyle, Nick Felder, those guys.
Sure.
And you had New Zealand, and Australia was supposed to come, but they pulled out because of the politics in South Africa. So there were only 4 teams: Canada, ourselves, British Isles, and New Zealand. And it was just, I was up in the clouds. I was probably numb for the week. But I do have a very fond memory of that tournament. We were playing against the British side, and I can't remember where we were in the tournament. I think we were tied first after 2 days. It was the 3rd day, and I was drawn against Sandy Lyle, and I was 3 down after 3, and I thought, oh geez, like, don't embarrass yourself here and whatever. But a very fond memory. I came back. I was quite a few under after that, and I beat him 1 up at the last. So after being 3 down after 3, so that's a very fond memory of the Commonwealth. That was 75, I think.
Sure. I also read that Dan Retief wrote that you had quite a reputation for sneaking those last hole victories or halves or whatever the case may be. What about that sort of circumstance when the chips are down resonated with you or really got you fired up?
Craig, that's a difficult one to answer. I don't know if it was coincidence that I sort of won a lot of games or halved a lot of games, sort of going up the 18th. Maybe if I'd played better earlier in those rounds, I would have won earlier instead of leaving it to the last hole. I don't know. But maybe it was, when you're young like that, you are a bit bulletproof. Arrogance of youth, whatever you want to call it. And you've got to bear in mind those days. So we're talking about the mid-70s. So I was sort of between the age of 20 and I was 26 in 1980. So I was still young and sort of a bit fearless in a way. So there was no particular plan to win at the 18th or halve at the 18th. It's just luck fell my way, I suppose. You know, I remember I sort of pulled a few putts on the 18th and had a few lucky breaks, but there was no sort of plan to it. Just luck, I suppose.
It's yeah, I mean, I find it absolutely astonishing how much media coverage you guys received. It's unbelievable. What did that make you like? Did you think about it quite a bit? Like, oh, I want to be in a position to be leading whatever, so I can chat to X person or whatever, like Dan Retief or whoever it may be. How much did that sort of motivate you to essentially get your name into the papers?
Yeah, Craig, we were so lucky in those days because we're going back now, I remember, to the mid-70s. So that's before TV. I think we only got TV in 76 or 77. But TV aside, we were also isolated in international sport. So it was all provincial stuff and local stuff. So from a golfing point of view, the media were incredibly kind to us, but they were looking for stuff to write. So you just had to really fart properly, and you got your name in the paper as a golfer. You know, club golf, local opens that we played in. You had Tinny Buerter from the Burger, and then you had Paddy O'Donnell from the Argus, and you had Dan Retief. He did, I think he was the sports editor then. You had Dick Stent from the Cape Times, and so you'd been 4 different papers if you won a local open, and it would be headlines on the back page or second back page. You know, I mean, it was a big thing compared to nowadays. I mean, nowadays, if you want to find out who won the Western Province Open, you don't even find it in the newspapers. You've got to go into media. You've got to get on your phone or your computer and go onto the websites for Western Province or the golf clubs. It just doesn't happen in the papers. So we were incredibly spoiled. Our photos were all over the place, and we made headlines, and we really were spoiled. And guys like Dan, they were very, very kind to us.
No, it's amazing. I think, you know, I was sifting through the content, and it's essentially pretty much 2 decades of like in terms of the timeline, which is it must be so cool to just be able to, you know, almost whenever you want, just sort of go back and reminisce, and yeah, it must be very, very special.
No, absolutely. You know, and I was quite lucky. My mom cut out every single press cutting, as you would have seen from the scrapbooks that I gave you, and she kept them in like a folder. And when we got married, my wife Lorraine actually went through that folder, and she put them all into scrapbook and date form. And you know, when I go through those scrapbooks, I just realize how spoiled we were, how lucky we were. You know, I'd beat Gerald Williams, I remember, in Mariesburg in a league golf game. I was playing in the Boerland League, so I was at Stellenbosch University. And it was in the Saturday Argus that night, the late night Argus, on the second back page was a headline: Todd beats Williams. It was a flippin' league match in Mariesburg, you know, so we were hell of a lucky. We really were. And as I say, our photographs splashed all over the papers. And so I suppose when you say spanning over 20 years, maybe there were a few memories that followed through, because I only did 10 years of provincial golf, 74 till 83. So it was a 10-year span of competitive golf. So no, as I say, I was just very lucky, right place at the right time.
Which, I mean, of that 10-year period, when would you say you were playing your best golf?
Craig, it wasn't consistent. So it ranged from that interprovincial at Palaboa in 74, end of 74, through to, I'd even go so far as to 83, my last year when I played interprovincial for province at Durban Country Club. But maybe I'll tape it off a little bit there. I won't talk about the 79 interprovincial at Bloemfontein where I lost 8 games out of 8. Your dad will certainly witness that. But yeah, I bounced back in, I think, 81, I think it was, or 82. I won the Cape Province Open at Mowbray. So it had gone through sort of winning from 74 through to 81, or that might have been 82, I think. If I can just brag a little bit,
go for it.
Something which I really am proud of. I won the Cape Province Open at Mowbray, and the same weekend, my wife Lorraine, she won the Western Province Ladies Stroke Play for the 2nd year running at Rondebosch. Sorry, it was at Clovelly. She won that, beating Gilly Whitfield, or Gilly Tebbit as she is now, and Wendy Warrington, who dominated province golf for probably. Gilly dominated for about 30 years. So that was actually a hell of a proud thing, not only for me winning the Cape Province tournament, but for my wife to be the Western Province champion at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jeepers.
Yeah, so my sort of competitive streak lasted from 74 to, I'd say 80, 81, 82, possibly 83.
And I also heard quite a cool story that from a mate of mine, Zach van der Schaaf, who I believe you do know fairly well. He was telling us a story about the 1 year you were playing, or I think Mowbray's men's club champs was the same weekend as the ladies' club champs at Rondebosch. And Lorraine was telling him that she could actually hear the roar from a roar that came from Mowbray at Rondebosch. I mean, that's like goosebump stuff.
Yeah, it's actually true. It was the Western Province Amateur. I was playing David Wren in the final, and she was playing in the Ladies Club Championships at Rondebosch, which she also won, incidentally. She beat Gilly Tebbit. And yeah, I was 10 under for it was 36 hole final. I beat him 5 and 3. He was 5 under, and I was 10 under. Yeah, and then there was a big crowd. You know, in amateur days then, we had huge golf followings, huge spectators, whether it was the Mornington Open or the Province Stroke Play or the Club Champs even. So there was a hell of a crowd there. I would say several hundred. And yeah, she did say that she was on the 5th at Rondebosch there, and she heard this huge cheer. Because what happened was we played the 6th in the afternoon, which is as you know, a par 5. Yeah. And we halved in eagles. Jeez. Yeah, I remember he'd drive forward and I'd drive 9-iron, and he was about 10 foot and I was about 30 foot, and I hold and he hold. And I think that was the roar that she was referring to.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's wild. I mean, these days, you get like a sprinkling of spectators at an event. I mean, it's weird. It's a change.
Club champs. I remember we used to play club champs, and the guys who'd played earlier, or the guys who'd played in the C division, and only they'd probably teed off in the morning, and we'd play in the afternoon. They'd come back and filter through the field and come and watch. So for club champs, you'd have 100+ spectators around the last green when you got there. So yeah, amateur golf had a big following from a spectator point of view.
What is your fondest memory from club champs? I mean, obviously you've got a lot to choose from with 7 wins, but I mean, is there anything that in particular that stands out?
Yeah, there is, Craig. Club champs was a big thing for us, as your dad will tell you. We wanted to get our name on the board at Mowbray. That was a big thing. O'Brien Barber, myself, your dad, and we had a lot of good players over the years at Mowbray, Butch Green and others, a string of them. So it wasn't just a walk in the park. And the one year, I think it was the last year that I won, it had become a 2-horse race going into the final round. It was Ricky McCrindle and myself. And I started badly in the last round, and I think he'd birdied a few. And by the time we finished the 8th, so there were 10 holes to go, I was 7 behind. And then I eagled the 9th, and he made par. And then I eagled the 10th, and he made par. So I picked up 4 shots in 2 holes. So now I was only 3 behind. And then I birdied the 11th. So I'd gone 3-3-3, and he dropped at the 11th. So I suddenly only 1 behind. So I picked up 6 shots in 3 holes. And then I birdied the 14th, and we were all square. And then 18, I remember, I hit my second. In those days, 18 was a par 5. The green was further back than what it is now.
Yeah.
And I missed the green to the right, and I chipped up to about 12 foot, and I hold it for birdie to win by 1 shot. So, yeah, I made up 8 shots in the last 10 holes to win by 1. Well, 7 behind and 1 by 1.
Jeez, that's madness.
So that's quite a fun memory, yeah.
My word. What is it like being in that sort of zone? Like what's going through your mind?
Craig, it's difficult to explain because before that I'd got off to a poor start, and I'd almost resigned myself after the 8th hole that I wasn't going to win it, and then eagled the 9th. So wow, that's sort of got me a bit switched on. And eagled the 10th, only 3 behind because he made par. And you get into a different zone. It's very hard to explain, but the best way is to say that it's a zone. You just get so focused and you switch off from everything else and just focus on what you've got to do. Very difficult to describe, Craig. But it was a lekker feeling, I can say that.
No, I'm sure. And sort of shifting to team golf, what are your fondest memories from playing like IPTs or, we'll get to the Eisenhower in a bit, but is there anything is there any particular anecdote you could tell us that sort of sums up the whole experience?
Yeah, Craig, team sports are the ultimate, Geez, because there you're sharing it with your buddies. So lots of disappointments. Gee, your dad will tell you about the under-23 tournament at Rondebosch, where I think our best handicap was probably a 1. We had a guy called Marnie van Skalkwyk who he didn't have a very good swing at all, but a lovely guy and very passionate. And I think he was about a 6 or a 7 handicap. And you had the Transvaal Eagles side, who I think their worst handicap was a scratch. They were all +1, +2. And we thrashed EP Free State on the first day. And the second day we thrashed Natal. And the last day we came up against, these Transvaalers. And we had a far better games average than them. So all we had to do was halve 6 all with them and we'd win the tournament. Long story short, 2 all after the foursomes. In the afternoon, I think I won my game. I think your dad won his. Jimmy Bredenkamp won his. I think O'Brien Barber might have won his. So we needed 2 points from the remaining guys out there. And Bernard Babis was 2 up with 3 to play. And John Terry was 1 up with 2 to play. So we just needed either one of their games or 2 halves. Anyway, while Bernard Babis was 3-putting the 16th, John Terry was 3-putting the 17th, and then Bernie 3-putted the 17th. John Terry overclubbed at the 18th and lost the hole. Poor old Bernard. Yeah, we were so built up to beat these guys and win the tournament, and it all sort of came down to Bernard, and poor guy hit it in the water on the 18th and lost the hole. So that was a hell of a disappointment. So that was a low light. Highlights, just playing in that province side all the years. Not only was it an honor, but it was just so lekker. But I think the real highlight was probably in 1981, Royal Durban. And I was lucky enough to be captain of the side. And we won the interprovincial there. And once again, we were, I can't say a bunch of no-hopers, but our lowest handicap might have been a scratch or a one, but we had no real outstanding players. But it was all about team spirit, all about just being mates, playing for each other. We had a guy called Tony Lowe. He'd won most of the tournaments that year. And before the tournament, we had to decide on an order of play, because we're all sort of much of a muchness. And I remember as captain, I said to Tony, Tony, you're not going to play number 1 this week. We're going to put you number 8. And there's a reason. The reason is that not only will you be the best number 8 in the country, there's no doubt about that, but you must win your games quickly. Because when we're out there and we have to win our games, we're going to need some support. So the quicker you win your game, the more support we'll have, because you'll come back and watch us. Well, I think the worst win he had that week was probably 5-4 or 4-3. He won 8-7, 7-6. So he could come back and watch us. So he could come back and support us. And that was really why we won the Interprovincial in 81. Not because we were superior golfers. As I say, the Southern Transvaalers, Northern Transvaalers, they were all plus handicaps. We weren't. But we just had such a good vibe, such a good team spirit and camaraderie. And that's why we won. So, yeah. I know golf's an individual sport, but trust me, it can be a team sport as well. You just look at those guys in the Ryder Cup, Craig. The vibe and the team spirit that they've got there. They're not playing for any money, but just playing for each other. It can be a really exhilarating and a terrific team sport.
Yeah, and I think what's also phenomenal is that with all of the success you guys had at club level and provincial level, and in your case, sort of national level, you definitely became like role models for the sort of next generation, so to speak. So I mean, here's a comment from sorry, that's the wrong one. Let me just find it. Oh, sorry.
Need my glasses here.
Yeah,
they just caught up with me.
Mike Mogadetti says, so my dad, I don't know why he's putting my dad in this category of legends, but anyway, so my dad, Bernard Babas, Obi, and yourself were legends of Mowbray and of Western Province. I mean, what is it? It must be pretty cool to know that you, in a way, that you had an impact on the next generation of players coming through.
Well, yeah, I don't really know what to say there, Craig. Michael Muggs, he's been a member of Mowbray all his life. He calls me Dad because we adopted him when he was about 9 years old. He was playing in the Golf Foundation with my son Michael.
Yeah.
And he spent weekends and school holidays at our house, and he grew up in our household. So I gave him away at his wedding because his dad had died, and so that's why he calls me Dad, because he grew up as my son. But he's a great guy, Mike, absolutely great guy. But the question there, Craig, impact on the guys,
impact on the next generation of guys coming through. I mean, I suppose in a way, like, you guys must have impacted, I suppose, someone like Neil Avery, who is a good 10 to 15 years younger than you. And
it was probably, Craig, because they were Mowbray members, and as I said before, getting your name on that board, the honours board at Mowbray, club champs, it was such a big thing for us. And as I said, the other people that played in club champs, other members came and watched. When they weren't playing or they finished their round, they came and watched. So I think those guys also wanted to get their names on the board. It was, get your name next to those other guys that are on the board. I mean, I was like that. I saw Royden Pivus and all those guys' names on the board. I just wanted to get that club champs and get my name on the board, and it became a very competitive thing to see how many times I could get it there. O'Brien Barber and myself, we had this thing going where we wanted to outdo each other and get our names on the board more times than the other guy. So we were a hell of a competitor. So, I mean, our competitiveness, you mentioned Bernie Babis and your dad, and did you mention O'Brien? Our competitiveness went off the golf course onto the squash court. We ended up, we were trying to keep fit for our golf, and we had this little competition going on the squash court, and we'd keep tally of who won the most games, or who was ahead on the log. And I remember he had 68 games, I had 62, and I played him the one day at Kelvin, and I think he had a bit of flu, which I'll dispute, or cold, and I beat him 7-love. So I was 69, 68 up. And I shook his hand. I said, thanks, Obi, 69, 68, and that's it. We won't play anymore. I've got you. And we didn't play again. So that's how competitive we were, to try and beat each other, from whether club level, club champs, in local golf, province golf, wherever we played, we were very, very competitive.
That's interesting, but slightly underhanded, but very, very cool. What sort of squash player were you? Because, how would you describe your game? Because I'd imagine your frame wouldn't have been too conducive to sort of quick movement off the mark and things like that.
Yeah, Craig, I can probably answer that in short. I think I talked a better game than I played. It was just sweat and, a bit like a bull in a china shop. But I was lucky enough to be effective enough to beat Obi, which is all that mattered.
Yeah, so I
was not competitive. I wasn't a competitive squash player, not like provincial, not even second league standard, but enthusiastic.
Yeah, so I've actually got a question here from my brother. He wants to know, did the success, would you attribute the success you had to wanting, I suppose we sort of answered this earlier, but I mean, was it just a function of just trying to beat those around you pretty much all the time type of thing?
Yeah, we were hell of a competitive, but we never lost sight of enjoying the game.
Yeah.
So we were great rivals on the course, but we were all good mates off the course. Good mates. Gee whiz, I remember after league games or tournaments, we used to go out and all eat together. We go to steakhouses with our limited funds and we were great mates, and that's why I think we did well in our junior competitions, under 23 provincials. We were always rated as fierce competitors, not because we were better golfers. As I say, the Transvaalers were much lower handicappers than us and better players because of their conditions. They didn't have the wind that we have down here. Their courses were always in fantastic conditions, whereas here, our courses have improved a hell of a lot with technology. In those days, in wintertime, you had the winter grass that came through on the greens. The greens were like lunch bars, they were lumpy, and the wind was a big factor. So, yeah, we were certainly not better golfers than the guys from upcountry, but I think they were very envious of our team spirit and our competitiveness, and the fact that we were all mates.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. I suppose, now you've got the sort of next generation of guys like, Garrick Higo, Luca Filippi, and guys like that have sort of progressed through the ranks with each other. But I'm curious, who? Oh, sorry, no. Sorry, Mike wants to know: did you have any thoughts of turning pro? And obviously, you ultimately didn't. And why was that?
Craig, thank goodness I didn't turn pro. I'd be a very hungry man right now. Yeah, I remember we went on a tour to Rhodesia, as it was in those days. So that would have been 76. And our team was Mark McNulty, who was my foursomes partner, and then Gavin Levinson and Robbie Stewart. And they were foursomes partners. And we played against the Rhodesian side, which was Nick Price, George Harvey, Teddy Webber, and Tony Johnston.
Okay, sure.
And out of the 8 of us, out of the 8 of us, I was the only one that didn't turn pro. And as I can say in retrospect, thank goodness I didn't, because I wouldn't have made it. And I think I knew at the time that I just wasn't good enough. Those guys were good enough. I mean, Gavin went on to play in the US Tour. Mark McNulty was in the top 10 in the world. Nicky Price was number 1 in the world. Ovi's Tony Johnson, he was in the top 12, I think, at one stage. George Harvey, I think we all know Jared Harvey, who plays on the tour. It's his dad. He's the pro at Mount Edgecombe now, I think. Teddy Webber, he's the pro at Atlantic Beach for many years. Yeah, so no, thank goodness I didn't. I never really got to the crossroads where I said, should I, shouldn't I? I think I realized before that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, well, at least it's not a case of, you did strongly consider it and then didn't, and now you look back sort of all these years later and you think, shit, well, I should have given it a go.
Yeah, I suppose the flip side of the coin is you never know. If you didn't try, then you don't know.
Yeah,
but in my own heart of hearts, I think in fact, I do know that. I wouldn't have made it.
And I mean,
didn't quite have the dedication, I don't think.
That's actually got an interesting point. How much did you, once you sort of finished school and went to varsity and then ultimately started working, how much time did you put into your game sort of outside of competition? Like, how much did you practice and how much did you play?
No, varsity, I was at varsity until 78. So what was I was 24. I would dedicate like a Friday afternoon, go down to a range at Stellenbosch where I was at varsity and spend the whole afternoon chipping, putting out of divots, over bunkers, thin lies, thick lies, hit balls on the range. And then Saturday and Sunday, if I didn't have 72 holes of golf on a Saturday and a Sunday, it was a bad weekend. If we only had 36 on a Sunday, then I felt like I'd missed out on the Saturday. So, no, golf was cricket. Really.
Yeah, it's insane how much it sounds like you guys played. It's so cool.
Yeah, and I suppose but then by the time I was 29, I think it was, when 83, I was 29, I'd sort of burnt out, I would say. Well, burnt out maybe isn't the correct word. Maybe I just deteriorated. I wasn't playing well enough anymore. And that was sort of when I tapered off and played my last Interprov and sort of retired from competitive golf at 83. I still tried a bit after that, but yeah.
But you in illustrious company at retiring at 29, then obviously Bobby Jones and Dale Hayes and guys like that. What else, occupied your time sort of when you started scaling back a bit?
I don't really know, to be honest. Lorraine and I, because we'd met when I was 27, I think. So we still played mixed golf just every Sunday afternoon. We played, and I would still play Saturday afternoon golf. But I think what had happened was I'd sort of lost my desire, my hunger for the competitive golf, because Lorraine and I were together. So spending 36 holes on a Sunday or a whole weekend playing golf, like I am now, pretty much in love. I was pretty much in love then. So my priorities had sort of changed a bit, I think. From golf to, just different priorities, I guess.
Is there any win in particular that you wish you had on your resume that you don't perhaps have?
Yeah, definitely. The South African stroke play. I remember I mentioned George Harvey, who played for Rhodesia. I tied for the South African stroke play at Mowbray the 1 year. And so George and I had a playoff. And I don't know why, but it was a 5-hole playoff. And in those days, the second at Mowbray was a par 5, and the sixth a par 5, but the 18th was also a par 5 in those days. So I really wanted to win that South African stroke play. And the first playoff hole, he had his tee shot in the trees on the right, and he had a chip out for his second. I was down the middle, hit it to about 10 foot. Blimmin' hell, he holed his third from about 50 yards out, pitch for a birdie, and I missed my birdie putt. So suddenly I was one behind. And then the second was a par 5, and I remember I missed about a 6-footer for birdie, and he made birdie. So I was 2 behind, and he was 2 under. Then we went across to the 5th for whatever reason, par 4, and we both made par. Then I birdied the 6th, he made par. So he was 2 under, I was 1 under, he was 1 under, and then we both birdied the 18th. So he was 3 under for the 5 holes, I was 2 under for the 5 holes, and I lost. So that was one that I really would have liked to have won.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jeez, that's
so near so far.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how fine the margin is between. I mean, it sounds cliched, but between winning and losing, it's be very, very annoying sometimes.
Yeah,
but,
very much so. But I had my breaks, as I mentioned before. With those wins that I'd had in those interprovincials and other tournaments, I had my fair share of 20-footers and 15-footers and up and downs and good breaks at the right time. So no regrets there. I had my fair share of breaks, Craig, trust me.
Yeah. So I mean, I think conversely, the good question is there any victory you most proud of?
Individual team sport. I think that 81 Western Province victory at the interprovincial will stand out in my memory for a long time. That was really special. From an individual point of view, yeah, I never won the South African stroke play, so that was a disappointment. I won the province stroke play, province amateur on a few occasions. So, yeah, I think beating Chris Heinemann at Rondebosch, my first Western Province stroke play, which was, I think, 74,
yeah.
That was probably my best one, yeah, because I was 20 and I wasn't really on the map. And they'd flown all the guys down from Transvaal, from Natal, all the top amateurs. So it was actually like a South African stroke play. And I tied with Chris Heinemann, who was a Springbok at that stage from Southern Transvaal. And we had a playoff. And I held a 20-footer at the last to beat him. So that probably stands out of my memory. That was when I sort of got on the map, as it were.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you use those words. I think those are the exact words that Dan Retief used in his article.
I think Dan put us on the map rather than us putting Western Province on the map. Dan was good to us. He gave us a lot of good coverage.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It was really, really cool to go back and read his thoughts on the state of the game in the province. But I hear that you, let me just find the comment here. So you've never had a hole-in-one. How close have you come?
Yeah, Craig, come close. Yeah, like most golfers, come close on quite a few occasions, sort of very close, ball hanging over the edge. But my family, my brothers had a hole-in-one. Lorraine, my wife's had a hole-in-one. My dad had 3. The whole family had holes in one, but yeah, never did it. Amazing how in golf you can have little goals. Obviously, one of mine was to get a hole-in-one. I believe Sevi never had a hole-in-one. I don't know if that's true. Sevi Ballesteros.
It may well be. I'm not 100% sure.
If I can digress, little mini goals that one sets up in golf. I remember one of my goals was to get 4 twos in a round. Played in the Somerset West Open one year, and we teed off back to front. Then the 12th was where you started the back 9. I teed off at the 12th, which was a short hole, made it 2. Then the 17th got it 2. Then the 4th on the next 9, hold about a 40-footer for a 2. And suddenly I realized, wow, I'm in line for 4 twos. Got to the 7th, and I hit it to about 6 foot from the hole. perfect uphill, right to left putt. Couldn't have asked for a better putt. And I was so nervous about achieving this goal of 4 twos in a round. From 6 foot, I left it short. So that was the one goal that I duffed. And then there was another one. For some reason, my dad had told me about somebody he played with who had 18 pars in a round. So it was always a goal of mine to get 18 pars in a round. And one year at the Met, I had 17 pars, got to the 18th, hit it to about 10 foot, and suddenly realized, oh, if I two putt here, I've got my 18 pars. And I hold it. I made threes. I duffed the
well, at least you,
and then
the other three putt for bogey. Slight consolation.
No, it was a par 4, so I hit it 10 foot for 2, and then anyway. And then another goal, funny enough, was to hit 18 greens in regulation.
Jeez.
And the closest I came was in the Rhodesian Open when we were on that tour in 75, 76. In the Rhodesian Open, I hit 16 greens in regulation and got to the 17th, the short hole, hit it straight at the pin, and it finished, and the pin was at the front of the green, finished 6 inches off the green, dead in line on the front of the green. And then I hit the 18th in regulation. So that was another goal that I never achieved. So 4 twos in a round, getting a hole in one, 18 pars, 18 greens in regulation, 4 goals, which sadly I never achieved, and I never will.
Well, you never know. You may sneak out for a round, like for the first time in 8 years, and strike a bit of luck. We'll see. We will see. But what? Sorry, I just need to gather my thoughts. I just wanted to ask about what you think of the progression of equipment over the years. I mean, what you guys were able to do with Persimmon Woods sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, it's changed incredibly, Craig. I mean, in our day, we played with steel shafts, and as you say, Persimmon woods were a luxury. We had laminated woods where the piece of wood was sort of stuck together. Okay. And if you had a Persimmon wood, then you'd done well. The old McGregor Persimmon wood was like the Rolls Royce. And the balls, we had the Slazenger and the Dunlop 65. They were like marshmallows compared to the balls that the guys have got today. So yeah, the equipment's changed radically. Now, I can't believe how far the guys hit the ball now. And they hit it so straight as well.
Well, again, I don't think you should sell yourself short. I mean, I'm sure you had wedges into all the par 5s at Mowbray even with that equipment back then.
Craig, if I can tell you a sort of a brag story, which happened to me. I was playing at Mowbray, and I was playing with my brother, so he'll vouch for it. And we came to the 10th at Mowbray, the par 5 dogleg to the right, and I had drive sandwich on the green, and so people could say, well, that's fine, strong northwester. But then the 11th, which comes back in the opposite direction, the same round, same day, I drove the green there. So I had drive sandwich on the par 5 10th, and then coming back the other way, drove the par 4. So yeah, when long hitting, that's something which I'll never forget. That was one of my, yeah,
that's wild. Just a couple of sort of like quick fire questions, and then let you get on with your day. I mean, there's no live sport to watch, but I'm sure you'll find something on like Netflix or something. But
get some bowls to watch. Yeah.
Oh, that's epic. Who's the most complete player you've ever seen play? Played with.
Most complete player.
Yeah.
Well, Craig, that's a very difficult question to answer. I think I'd probably have to say Gary Player. I was lucky enough to be drawn with him in the Dunlop Masters one year, Kensington, and that man, I mean, even now at the age of 85, he's the most remarkable person. So I would say he was probably the most complete player. Not that he had the best talent in the world. He was never the longest hitter or but sheer guts, dedication, mental strength would probably out of the players that I played with, I guess he would be the guy that I would say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think 9 senior majors, and allegedly 160 worldwide wins. I mean, I think that's definitely got to be one of the best ever. But just one more anecdote before we finish off with the quick fire questions. You once were playing the 17th and hit it on the 18th. Do you recall that?
Yeah, I do. I was playing with Roy Smith, and Mowbray the 17th. You got the railway line going down the right hand side, and I had one of my, talk about length, and I spoke about width. That was one of my width drives, and I hit it straight right with a fade out the middle of the club onto the 18th, and I went across the railway line, hit my second on the green, and he said, "No, sorry, you were out of bounds." And it's still a contentious issue. I'd love to ask some rules masters whether, in fact, I was out of bounds, because I was in the field of play. I mean, I was on the 18th. But Roy said that I'd gone over the railway line and my ball hadn't come back in bounds. So I'd crossed the railway line and not come back. So I don't know. I would assume I was in bounds, but he said no, I'd gone over the railway line, so therefore I was out of bounds.
Yeah, well, it sounds like that's a question for Eric Lefson. I think I've heard he got 99.7 or something for his RNA final exam, which is, I mean, that's unbelievable. But
I tell you, the rules of golf are they're so finicky, and that's incredible. Gee whiz.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, I think they could go a long way to simplifying the rules. I mean, I think they're it's a bit bizarre. But
yeah,
which is I mean, you say you watch a lot of golf these days. Which is the one major you look forward to every year?
Without doubt, the Masters. I read a book when I was 13. I'm trying to think of the author. I think it was Frank Beard, and he wrote a book on the Masters. It was in diary form. And I read that book and I said, one day I'm going to go to Augusta. Not to play the course, I just want to go there.
Yeah.
And in 97, my dream came true. David Frost, it was his 10th Masters. And every time he'd taken his family across. And this year in 97, he said he's going to, it's payback time. He had 7 tickets. And he said he's going to give these to his mates. Well, he actually had 5. Because the other two he gave to Clive Swirsky and his dad. His dad was his lawyer in his divorce. He gave those tickets to Clive and his dad. But yeah, the other 5 he gave to 5 of us, his mates. And I went there and we arrived. We played TPC Sawgrass on the Sunday and we motored through on the Sunday night. And we got to Augusta at 9 o'clock on the Monday morning. And we spent 7 days. And we walked that course all day, every day. The 3 practice rounds and then the Masters itself. Obviously, you can't walk as much there because there's so many people.
Yeah.
But when we came back on the plane, I said, if the plane crashes now, that's okay with me. That's my dream. I've done it. So yeah, the Masters for me. And then next in line would be the Open. British Open, obviously. Which I was lucky enough to go to in 2010. My brother and I won a trip with Bell's Whiskey, and we went to that as well. Yeah, all expenses paid. It was brilliant.
That was an ideal one to go to, with Louis winning by, I think, 7 or something.
Absolutely.
Sure, that must have been insane. And
it was.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to sort of finish up with a couple, hopefully decent questions. But if there's one shot in your life that you wish you could take back or have again, which would it be and why?
If there was one shot.
Yeah, I know it's a bit of a tough ask, but
if there was one shot. No, Craig. I really can't. I can think of a lot of shots, but nothing that actually stands out in my mind. I can think of a lot of shots. maybe the birdie putt I had against George Harvey in the South African stroke play playoff, because that was something I really wanted to win. And I missed that. It was about 4 foot. But no, nothing really stands out in my mind.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about it. Yeah, I know.
And just finally, what advice would you give to someone sort of making their way in the amateur game now, in terms of what, like, the key to, I mean, obviously there are multiple keys, but the key to ultimately succeeding and becoming a really consistent player? What would you put that down to?
You know, the amateur game has changed a lot since, our day. So maybe I can describe that as follows. In our day, you didn't have driving ranges where you bought balls and you went there and you just hit balls, and you had your own little shag bag and you counted your balls. You made sure that if you started with 30, you finished with 30. And you either picked up the balls yourself, or you had a caddy that, picked them up for you and you counted them afterwards. So that's changed a lot. But we didn't have coaches and fitness trainers and things like the guys have got now. So I'll give you an example. We went to that interprovincial in Bloemfontein, and your dad was my foursomes partner, and I was having an absolute nightmare. I really felt for your dad. So after 3 days, we'd lost all 3 of our foursomes games, and your dad won all his singles games, but I lost all my singles. So I'd lost 6 out of 6.
Sure.
And our team manager, I think it was Tony Runkle in those days, in desperation, we didn't have coaches like the guys have nowadays. Bobby Furvey's father, a guy called Jock Furvey, happened to be there watching. And so after, on the Thursday night, our manager went to Jock and said, look, won't you go and have a look at Peter on the driving range tomorrow and see if you can just help him, give him a tip for the last day, so can help him. So we went to the driving range, and I had my practice ball bag and caddy, and we emptied the balls out, and old Jock Furvey hadn't said anything. He said, I want you to hit driver. So I took the driver out, pegged it up and hit it, and sure, big cut. The caddy ran, sprinted off the ball, pegged the next one up, big hook. There the caddy ran. And then the next one was a big cut, and the caddy, and I don't know how many balls I hit. I probably hit 7 or 8 balls, but they were all the same. Caddy was just running. It was ridiculous. And old Jock Furvey turned around. He looked at me, and I can't use the word that he used, so I'll just use the word bugger it. So he said, bugger it. If my dog was here, he would have barked. And Jock Furvey turned around and he walked off the practice. And that was it. That was my lesson. Anyway, needless to say, I hit my first tee shot straight right. Poor dad. We lost that game as well. Then I lost my singles in the afternoon. So I had this record of 8 losses out of 8. But going back to your question, nowadays, you've got all the technology, you've got the ranges, you've got the equipment, the balls. So it would just be time, stay fit, put in the hours. You put in the hours, then you'll get the rewards at the end of the day. But there's no substitute for hard work and practice. Like Gary Player always said, harder you practice, luckier you get. Yeah.
No, very, very wise words. But thank you so much for the time. That was so much fun. I could have done it 2 hours. So it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I hope I didn't waffle too much. Thank you, man.
Not at all. It was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. Cheers, man.
Cool. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.